The company named Polymer80 currently sells full firearms, the kits to make them with the full parts at full price with serial numbers on both types. And they also sell non-serialized lower receivers with all the parts needed to make it, and you have to buy the jig separately, and you have to assemble it. You can also just buy the lower receiver itself for $64 all the way up to $110 for these firearms, with or without a jig to guide you in making it work, for the purpose of making a firearm or even a paintball gun. And since they sell things that are serialized, someone claiming that a Polymer80 pistol or handgun or rifle, could have been an AR, could have been the pistol, could have been a Sig Sauer alike, someone claiming they found a Polymer80 at a crime scene doesn't necessarily mean it was without a serial number. Also, it could have been born with a serial number and someone ground it off. That's a ghost gun by definition in the old days. And the new fake definition is a gun that never had a serial number because you made it yourself and you're not required to put a serial number on it. But maybe you are in that state. That's the second one. And the other one is it was made by someone else, but that doesn't mean the perpetrator made it. So what's the cost of these things? Well, they go from $64 to $110 or $80, depending on how much of a complete kit you want to get for the pistol or the AR version. AR platforms can be pistol or rifle. That's anywhere from 8 to 12% of the normal cost that I'm seeing on the page for $800. And please remember, you can buy much cheaper firearms that do about the same thing or exactly the same thing for anywhere from $500 on down, including, yes, I'm going to say it, the High Point, which is not made out of plastic. It's not a ghost gun. It's just a cheap firearm that once you run it through 1,000 rounds or so, it actually becomes a reliable firearm. The AR in one piece may be cheaper than building one for $800, and I can guarantee the pistol is about the same sort of situation, unless you buy, again, a cheap version. So why would someone who's a criminal go out of their way to buy a gun that's an unfinished lower with a jig, drill holes in it, obviously to avoid serial numbers? Or they would just buy a gun from someone else where they ground off the serial number, which is what ghost gun means. It just means they can't trace it easily because it's missing the serial number. Criminals grind off serial numbers all the time. It has nothing to do with it being Polymer80. And again, Polymer80 sells full-on firearms and lowers that have serial numbers on them. They're a gun manufacturer. They do. They tell you to go to a store to buy it so that you can do it within your state and follow the rules. But you can buy the lower receiver as either a block of plastic with nothing imprinted in it and almost everything done, and then the same lowers the company uses to make their own guns. They just sell you the lower because, legally speaking, the ATF has said you're allowed to, because it's not considered a firearm. Please understand that the AR upper receiver, AR-15, is technically capable of firing a shot by itself. The ATF doesn't want to deal with the fact that their own ruling says that the AR-15 having a split receiver, the upper and lower receiver, neither of which are the only part or the main part that needs to be there to make it fire, it doesn't technically have a lower receiver to put a serial number on. But they've decided the lower receiver is the most important part because it joins the majority of parts, even though the upper receiver can be turned into a firearm directly. So anyway, Jeremy Ryan, a guy who shot somebody and killed them, as well as a couple of other people, school shooter, apparently fired either an AR-15 in pistol configuration, AR-15 in rifle configuration, or a Sig Sauer or some other pistol configuration firearm. And it's being blamed on Polymer80 or something by, quote-unquote, news sources. Sources said Polymer80 was recovered from Jeremiah Ryan's home because he dropped it in a bag out of a window. But the police refused to say it was a ghost gun, meaning missing a serial number. The legal definition that they use in that city is that it simply lacks a serial number. Why the hell wouldn't they jump at that? They can check it instantly. It should also be pointed out that the other, it's an $800 gun, the other $740 worth of parts can have serial numbers on them. And sometimes people make note of that when they sell things. And some places you're required to. So we have this unserialized claim based on the police refusing to say it was unserialized. So it could have been a completely serialized, generic, ordinary, purchasable gun. And depending on, look up the state this happened in. A gun that's completely legal where I'm at, is illegal in other states. In some states, me assembling my own gun from parts from 2 guns so I can have one good gun and throw all the parts out or sell them is illegal, because that makes me a gun manufacturer even though I'm a maker, and honestly all I'm doing is just repairing a gun. Some people buy the lowers, the Polymer80 lowers, or other companies' lowers, to take some parts from a broken gun and just fix it, not like Glocks ever break, or other. And the majority of the parts were part of the original gun. And if it was from a factory, they generally note the serial numbers, if any, on all the parts. So it's literally just considered a repair part, but because it has the serial number and the ATF ruling about it, you're supposed to put a serial number on it. You use the century and the year, 2022, the month, April, so it's a 04, and then today's date in the month is 9, so it's 09, and I'm doing this video at 6:51 p.m., so we call that 1851 by adding 12 to it, so we have military time. And that's your long, drawn-out serial number, which is very specific and very easily figured out to be the time and date stamp from when I finished it. And then after that, you put in, let's say, WAPTEC, to give it a name, company name or maker name, and then the zip code for the location is all that's needed, if it's obvious that it's a zip code. Yeah, that's how you serialize it. And the only rules currently being whined about, because again, Second Amendment advocates often lie about laws being done by any liberal that comes near them, are claiming that they're coming for your guns. You have to serialize your firearm. So serialize it. Jeremiah Ryan may or may not have had a ghost gun. The news is playing it up. And only one source, or two, tried to identify what it was, and they didn't mention whether it was a pistol configured AR-15, or a rifle. It's probably the pistol, because it's more gangsta. And that's about it. Yeah, for the $64 part is the most important part of the story, rather than somebody could have had just the parts from another gun and had a broken lower receiver and just made a new one. Or it could be a fully sold with serial number Polymer80 that somebody ground the serial number off, or so it was legal in the first place, or or never had it ground off and it's just a standard Polymer80 that someone got a hold of and shouldn't have. He's been arrested for illegal possession of a firearm, not illegal manufacture or making. That's telling. As for it being a ghost gun, there's no confirmation from any police department yet. News websites are saying sources said. Sources lied, maybe. So it could have had a serial number when they got it. It could be a completely valid, totally cromulent firearm from some other state imported or smuggled. Or it could have had it ground off, or it could have been born with no serial number. Until they show it, explain it, and not lie, we don't know. So yeah, or he could have just gone ahead and done what everybody else does and get a non-Gucci Glock spare parts kit from somebody Gucciing up their Glock and just made a new gun. Or maybe they just, it's a stolen gun. So anyway, so the story's full of holes so far. I hope Jeremy Ryan, who is the perpetrator of a murder, if he is the murderer, I hope he burns in hell. But the claim it's Polymer80 and has to be a ghost gun is erroneous, and it may be a ghost gun because someone filed off the serial number and has nothing to do with them, or they may have misidentified it because maybe it's not theirs. Anyway, until an actual story answer comes out from the police department, we don't know what it is. So if you were looking up Polymer80, ghost gun, Jeremy Ryan, some of you already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Anyway, it's a $64 part if it was the pistol, most likely. Be cheap. And it's probably from a parts kit from spare pieces from other guns that have been torn down to upgrade them or change them. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.